You don't miss them the same way anymore. And the first thing your mind tries to do is explain that. It reaches for words like distance, fading, or emotional decline. Anything that makes the change feel intentional. But what you're noticing doesn't feel dramatic enough to be a loss. It doesn't ache. It doesn't pull. It just feels different. The thought of them still appears. Their name still registers. A memory still forms. But it arrives without urgency, without momentum. Nothing inside you leans forward anymore. The moment doesn't ask you to follow it. And that absence of movement is unfamiliar, because for a long time, missing meant motion. It meant being pulled somewhere, backward, inward, into what could have been. Now the moment ends where it begins. And you notice that before you understand it. Something has already shifted, even if you haven't named it yet. There was a time when missing them acted like a signal. It activated something. A sequence. One thought would lead to another, then another, until the past felt active again. Even when nothing happened externally, something was always happening inside you. The connection stayed alive because you kept returning to it. Now the return doesn't happen. The thought shows up, and nothing follows. That's what feels unsettling, not the lack of feeling, but the lack of continuation. You almost expect the old response to arrive late, like it's buffering. But it never does. The system doesn't escalate. It doesn't ask questions. It doesn't demand resolution. If you've ever noticed this shift quietly and wondered whether anyone else feels it too, staying here a little longer matters. Not to understand it, just to recognize it as it unfolds. Because what's changing isn't memory. It's how much authority memory still holds. For a long time, missing someone was a form of participation. Even without contact, you were involved. You carried them forward internally, replayed conversations, and imagined alternate outcomes. The bond didn't need presence. It survived on repetition. That repetition gave the past leverage. What's different now is not that you stopped caring. It's that the repetition stopped working. The system learned something quietly, through experience rather than decision. Each time the thought appeared, and nothing followed, the loop weakened. Each time emotion didn't escalate, the structure lost influence. You didn't close anything. You just stopped reopening it. And because that happened without drama, without a defining moment, it can feel confusing. You might scan yourself for signs, depth, warmth, intensity, just to confirm you're still the same person. But nothing feels wrong. Nothing feels blocked. The absence of struggle is the part that stands out. And it keeps standing out the longer you notice it. You can feel this change most clearly in what no longer requires effort. Before, not missing them took work. You redirected thoughts. You managed emotion. You reminded yourself of reasons. Even silence required attention. Now there's no management. The thought doesn't need to be handled. It appears, and it passes. No tightening. No internal negotiation. No second wave asking what this means. The body stays where it is. Breath stays even. The moment doesn't split your attention into before and after. That stability can feel almost too quiet, especially if intensity once felt like proof of depth. But nothing inside you is strained. Suppression would feel tight. Avoidance would feel brittle. This feels settled. If this realization is landing quietly while you listen, you don't need to hold on to it. Just let it continue. These shifts tend to reveal themselves more clearly when they're not forced. Because the system isn't resisting anything. It's simply no longer investing. There may still be moments when the mind checks for the old reaction. Almost automatically. As if to ask, should there be more here? The question rises, then fades. It doesn't reopen anything. In the past, doubt itself was enough to restart the loop. Questioning whether you were over something became a reason to re-enter it. Now, uncertainty no longer generates movement. It just passes through. Some people try to revive the feeling at this point, replaying memories, leaning into longing, just to feel something familiar again. But you're not doing that. You're letting the absence remain absent. If you're still here, listening without urgency, that's often because something already resonates beyond words. Because what ended didn't end emotionally. It ended structurally. And structures don't need goodbye speeches. They stop being used. The body confirms what the mind keeps trying to interpret. Before, memory came with sensation, a pull, a heaviness, a subtle contraction. Now the memory can surface without altering posture or breath. The body doesn't prepare for impact. That absence isn't numbness. It's specificity. You still feel deeply where something is active. You just don't feel here anymore. The nervous system has updated its reference point. It no longer treats that connection as unfinished or unresolved. Time changes, too. Dates pass without weight. Songs play without reopening anything. Places exist without echo. Not because they lost meaning, but because meaning no longer needs reinforcement. The past stays where it is. The present doesn't get punctured. And in that continuity, you may notice how little energy it takes to simply be where you are now. No comparison. No internal split. Just pay attention to staying whole. That wholeness isn't dramatic. It's accurate. Eventually, the realization lands without ceremony. You don't miss them the same way anymore because missing no longer has a function. It isn't required to keep the story intact. What you shared is already secured in time. Nothing needs to be proven through longing. Nothing needs to be carried forward emotionally. You may still remember. You may still feel warmth, tenderness, or respect when the memory passes through. Completion doesn't erase feeling. It removes obligation. The quiet that remains isn't emptiness. It's alignment. Your inner world no longer organizes itself around something that has already finished. Life moves without referencing what ended. Decisions form without accounting for an absence. Time flows without dragging the past along. This isn't something you decided. It's something your system recognized. And the recognition doesn't demand action. It simply continues. You don't miss them the same way anymore. And that's not a loss. That's data.